Yeah, your camera is very sharp. Are you using the
We use the
the
iPhone.
phone? Yeah.
Yeah.
I need to set that up. I actually had my uh have a ring light that usually sits right here, but the other day, and that's where I put my iPhone when I do what you're doing. But the other day it like fell off my desk, and so it's literally just sitting on the floor on the other side because I never bothered to like stand it back up because I
Yeah.
wasn't using my camera much anymore. Um, because we haven't been doing this in a while.
Yeah. Yeah. It's actually been a long while. Well, it has been a long while. It's been at least like a month, hasn't it?
It's been definitely over a month. I think the last episode we recorded was in mid-September, which looking back, it's a great episode. That was the real world with real trees. I think this
Yeah.
is going to be super germane today and the importance of like getting out of the matrix. Um,
Yeah.
so if anything, it was a premonition.
Yeah. I honestly love the whole analogy of coming out of the Matrix. I know we've talked about it. We've actually said that quite a bit on on here. But we're all like living in this Matrix, and we're getting like more and more sucked into it. I
Yeah.
don't know if you've seen a movie called Fahrenheit 451.
Hmm.
There's also a book. I mean, it's originally a book, right?
Yeah, yeah. Love
And
the book.
it's very much like, this futuristic world, right? And we have screens on all our walls, and we're just always in, consuming digital like products and digital just time. And so there goes
Hmm.
our whole time. And of course books are banned, they're actually burned and all that stuff. But it's funny, we're not that far from there. Like if you
Yeah.
look where we're at today as a society, we're not that far from there. We're there. And then we're basically all every single day, we without like plugging ourselves into the back of our head, we plug in almost every morning into the Matrix.
Yeah, it's especially telling to see it with our kids. I don't know if you have this with your kids. Of course, we try to be very intentional about like low screen time with the boys. They're both very young still. But like so they will get super fixated just on our watch. Like Steph will have a watch face on that like
Mhm.
changes and they'll like just like keep tapping it to like see the new watch face. And that's like you see that and it's like I mean it's pretty reflective because you're like, oh man, that's me, except for instead of it's a watch face, like I'm just constantly checking notifications on my phone.
Yep.
And our youngest is really great. He'll even like call us down. He'll be like, no, don't be on your phone. Which is great. But yeah, we're it's a wild world to think about like how things have changed and how it's even going to be different for our kids as they grow
Yeah.
older.
Yeah, that's you know, I feel like we're coming full circle on this show. I really do, with the stuff that we're at now. And I remember growing up. We both grew up in the '80s. I think we're like almost around the same age. I'm probably a little older than you.
I think you're like 2 years older than me, but yeah.
But but thanks for calling that out. But uh, we both grew up in the '80s.
Yeah.
Totally different world, right? Like technology was around, but it was in its like early stage. It was in like its infancy. Um, and we went out, we spent a lot of time outside, right? And but it was also safer outside. You could go outside and
Yeah,
it felt safer. Like
exactly.
I would ride our big wheel around our street, like in the street. You remember
Yeah.
those big old big wheels that you sit on and lean back and you're spinning
Yeah.
the tires. If you spin fast enough, the tires actually spin.
Hmm.
Really cool. And we spend a lot of time outside, like a whole bunch of time. And over time, as things have changed, and it's not to say that everybody's doing that, but as like a society as a whole or as a majority, like that's the direction we're going. And these screens have kind of taken over, and you have to make like a real effort as a parent today to not let that happen. I mean, it's almost impossible.
Hmm.
I work, we both work,
Yeah.
from home. We're on our screens, and when we're working, that work is consuming. I can start the day at 8:30, and before I know it, it's noon. Just
Yeah.
like that. It's
Hmm.
noon. And then, maybe I take a lunch. Sometimes I forget to take a lunch till like 1 or 2, or I don't take one. And here we are at 5 o'clock. The whole day's gone. I'm at home, but I don't always know what my kids are doing. Like my wife is here as
Yeah.
well. She's a nurse, so she only works like one day a week. But I don't always know what they're doing, right? And so sometimes I'll get up to go check and try to get them to do something else. But it's just it's a challenge today for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's uh I know our youngest feels it more than our oldest because of course, like you mentioned, is we're very busy, right? We're all very busy. And sometimes as even me, like this is terrible to say, but like sometimes I'll get off work and like I don't have the energy. So like, hey, do y'all want to watch an episode or two of Blippi or Bluey? Or like, do you want to play some video games together for a little while? And that sort of draws them in. And to then like you come downstairs because kids are super creatures of habit. I'm coming downstairs from work and they're like, it's time to play video games. And I'm like, actually, we're just gonna go outside and play
Yeah.
outside today. Like, and really trying to meter that because yeah, it is very easy. And like you said, very impossible because like at this point, if we're like trying to be low screen or intentional about that, like you're almost counterculture, because most of the kids will have like phones or tablets or and like I mean, I feel bad for our oldest because he's not super culturally aware because of that. Like he doesn't know, you made that video on the Lion King recently. Like he's never seen the Lion King. And he's never seen like all of his friends dressed up as Spider-Man for Halloween and stuff. He doesn't know who Spider-Man is. And I'm like, so we're constantly trying to find ways to introduce him to these pieces of the culture that are really, really important for his socialization without necessarily having to introduce him to all that comes with it,
Yeah.
especially when you think about like Spider-Man and stuff. Because I'm like, I don't want him to like get in that like fight mode yet. Like he doesn't have that in him. And I'm really
Yeah.
happy about that. But it's hard because it's hard to balance that. Like, how else do you introduce the Marvel superheroes that are literally everywhere without like introducing him to like the idea that like you beat up bad guys
Yeah.
and watching some movies or some cartoons or something?
And once you start down that route, it's never ending, right? It's a rabbit hole. Like, just to really hit home on what you're talking about, even with just this one genre. If
Yeah.
you were to try to watch the latest Marvel movie, you have to go back and watch like 2 million movies
Yeah.
to,
It's
to
intense.
understand where everybody's at and what's going on and all the stuff that happened before. And it's very intentional. Like Marvel's and Disney, they're pretty good about this. They're very intentional that they string everything together to where you almost can't just watch the
Yeah.
latest one. You have to know what's happened, or you have to go back and watch it. And again, it's really great marketing, right? It's really a great way to make money. So they're, I can't fault them for being great capitalists, but as a parent, yeah, it's a difficult balance. You're trying to let them have some of this, to enjoy some of these things, but then not to get sucked in. And us being off of this for over a month is a real like example of that. The
Mhm.
the want and the desire to kind of pull back a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, I think maybe we should do you want to talk about that? Do we want to just dive right in? So we haven't done this in a while. Both of us are busy dads working full-time jobs and managing our families. And especially like maybe it's the season. But I do like to spend a lot of time at the end of my year reflecting on what comes next. And I know you've been very deep in some of those things, and we've, I think, reflected a lot on this podcast and even the journey that we're on together. And yeah, we've come to some conclusions. And one of them, I think, is that this is not saving babies, right? And so in the layer cake of life, like if something has to go, it's this, and that's okay. Like I think that's really an important and intentional acknowledgement. And so we haven't recorded the podcast in a while because we have had more important things to do.
Yeah. You're always looking for, stuff has to go. You don't have time to do everything. So you start looking at things that you can trim back, and pull back from. And it's not that this podcast wasn't enjoyable, because it absolutely was. I mean, I've gone back and listened to some of the episodes, and I that I like more than others, or um, I have an appreciation for them. And I think about uh, there's something bigger than just like the podcast, right? There's a reason why, and it's the core of it is realizing that and then now this podcast, Ben called us tech adjacent, right?
Yeah.
Which is very fitting, because we don't necessarily come on here and say, hey, we're going to talk about this specific technology, how to do this and that. There's lots of people that do that, and honestly, I'd probably lose my mind because I don't I don't love tech that much anymore these as I used to. When you first come in, you come in with this fire, and there's like a million things to learn, and you're just like eating them up. Like, oh, what's the next thing I need to learn? What's the next thing I need to learn?
Mhm.
And we have different, I guess, like tenures in terms of like not just work, but how long we've been around in and around tech.
Mhm.
And I know I'm like summarizing or I'm putting all tech in a bubble, and maybe that's not fair, but that's what I'm doing. Anything tech related, right? Like you're delivering software, maybe you're just writing a job to run on a schedule, maybe you're just fixing something, maybe you're just making something more efficient. But I'm putting all this in a bubble, and I'm saying that for me, um, it's kind of run its course.
Yeah.
I'm toward the end of my journey in tech, and I'm at the last part, and we're going to come back and we're going to talk about what we're doing after this here in a second.
Yeah.
But it's like I'm entering the tunnel that is the exit to tech.
Yeah.
That's
A
where I'm
while
at.
back, we did a podcast on like getting in and leaving through the back gate. And I think if I could borrow that analogy, you had a really good analogy there of like, storming a castle and trying to get in. And now you're at the back gate. You just gotta find the time to slip through. And yeah, I mean, I totally understand that. The bubble that you talk about, like we are tech adjacent, and that is on purpose because, like you, I don't love any aspect of tech long enough or enough to talk about it for like long periods of time anymore. It's so funny. I remember when I first got into this field, even before then, like I loved gadgets. I would buy like Raspberry Pis and Arduinos, and like then, I had a whole bunch of like phones and Hackaday jobs, and I had like this all of these like old electronics that I would tinker with and stuff. And like I sort of knew it was done for me of when we were moving into this house and we were looking at like what was going to go, and I just took all of that to the e-waste. I just literally, I had boxes, they were already packed and ready to go to the house, and I was like, you know what, no, this chapter of my life is in the past. And so I took all of that technology, like all of those extra cords. I don't know if you were ever this person, but I was this person that would keep like all of the extra power cords in case like I needed them. And at some point I was like, you know what, never going to need them. If I do, there's like a Best Buy or a Walmart or a
Yep.
Target down the road that sells them. All of this is just capture. It's just capture. And it's not me capturing it, it's it capturing me. And so, the boxes went to the e-waste around the corner, and I was like, I'm done with that part of my life. And that's sort of when I saw the end of it. I knew at that point that things were on their downhill for me and tech. 'Cause I started just wanting stuff to work and not necessarily like wanting to tinker. Like I don't know if you know this about me, but until around that time, I ran Linux day to day, and I just stopped and I bought a Mac because I was like, you know what? I don't even want the capability to spend a bunch of time like doing a bunch of tinkering and stuff. I just want to be able to like open the thing and do the thing and close the thing, and that's it. And so I definitely like hear you on where you are. And I want to be explicit for our audience. Like this is the last episode of the podcast that we're recording. I'm not gonna say for now, even though that might be true, because I want to give this closure. And so because of where we both are, but I do want to talk about what comes next. What comes next for Ram?
Yeah. I'm glad that you were very explicit because I don't think we did that up until just that now. But yeah, absolutely. This is the nail in the coffin for we're not saving babies. And you said it's not for now. And I think that if we were to do something down the line, it would not be we're not saving babies. It would be something different because this belongs here, and you sometimes have to leave
Yeah.
the past behind you. So what's next? Well, um, lots of things, honestly, and I'm hoping that anybody who's followed us on this will follow us what we do next. So for me, being very explicit in case my boss is listening or something, is I'm going to work my day-to-day job and I'm going to just do it. And when I'm done, all my extra time, aside from like with my kids and things like that, it's going to be doing things that really are passionate to me. And there's a couple of things. So one of those is I had wanted to start like a YouTube. It's not necessarily like YouTube specific, but a platform where I could review movies and not review movies, but talk about the moments in movies that had really long and lasting impact on me. And as of this recording, I released the first one.
Hmm.
The second one I've already recorded. I just need to edit it. And because film like really impacted me, and I know probably a lot of people could say, well, yeah, film impacts me too, but I think it's on a different level. And we actually mentioned this on on one of the first podcasts, probably like a year ago or something. And we said, what was our dream job? And I
Hmm.
kind of go back and forth between what my dream job is. And sometimes I say, well, it's working on a farm,
Hmm.
right? Or having my own farm, my own ranch. And the other one is being a filmmaker,
Yep.
right? And I'm not talking about like just film and Instagram videos or whatever. I'm talking about like telling a story.
Yeah.
And for me, the one way that made sense to start down that journey was to start Movie Moments YouTube channel, where I can first talk about the films that and the moments in the films and the performances and scores, things like that that really impacted me. So I can help me understand like where I want to go. Of course, lots of things like filming, editing, a lot of the things that I can continue to work on to where I can um, eventually maybe release a short film. So that's absolutely one. If you haven't seen it, you can look up Movie Moments. The first one I released was Lion King, 29 years in the making, because I saw the movie when it came out. I can remember it like it was yesterday. And so I'm just super excited about that. And I'm gonna write some books. And I've had a fiction novel in my head for like 10 to 15 years. And you probably have one too, or
Hmm.
many. I have a couple, but there's one that just always resurfaces. It's like it's a story that wants to be told. It's just dying to get out. And I've started to work on that, like actively work on it. And then I'm going to also write about like my exit. We talked about this before.
Hmm.
How do you exit? Like you want it to be on your terms. There's many people that were exited forcefully out of the
Yeah.
tech market under no control of their own. And so I wanted to talk about what the exit looks like if I have anything to say about it. And so yeah, those are some of the things I'll be doing. I think there's like one other that I failed to mention, but ultimately it's the things that are important to me. Like if I could wake up and do a job, it's doing it on my schedule, telling stories. Storytelling has always been like super important to me, but it's almost like this this supporting character in your life that is there, and it's always in the background, and sometimes you fail to notice it, and you kind of just but then they always like end up stealing the show, right? They end up stealing their scenes,
Hmm.
and you finally say, I need to start paying attention to this, right, to this character. And I think that's where I'm at in my life.
Yeah, I love that notion, like the way that it stills our attention, and like the focus, right? Like it's almost like an angel and a demon. You have something that's like you're really really passionate about, and and when you don't give it the attention that your brain really needs to, it becomes almost like, I mean, it becomes detrimental to your mental health, right? And or it becomes detrimental to mine. And so I love that. I want to just capture a couple of things similar to you. Of course, I'm going to be doing my 9 to 5 or 9 to 4:30, and then like I have this block of time on my calendar from 4:30 to 8:30 at night that says Randy is a dad. And so of course those are the two jobs, right? Those are the two big jobs. Is I'm going to work my day job, and I'm going to focus on my kids. After that, like I'm not sure. I don't want to, like, for this audience, of course, there's been this journey with Anvil, and honestly, we're still unpacking that. Like, what does that mean? I think you know what it means for you, and we can be explicit about that. And of course, that leaves me with some questions for what it means for me. And so I don't want to unpack that at the moment, but I do know that those two things are kind of the staples, similar to you, like sort of returning to like, hey, something's got to go. And so right now I don't know what else is going to go, but I do know what I'm keeping, and it's those two things, right? I got to have the job, um, because it's how I take care of the family, and then I have to have the family because otherwise it's the thing that stills the show. And beyond that, I'm not really sure what will fill my time, not saving babies. Yeah, but so returning back to you, I did watch the first video. The thing that you did in it that is the most impressive to me is that it's long enough to hit the YouTube algorithm. Like, the YouTube algorithm is a game of long form content, and it's a good 15-minute video where you break down and I also love that you didn't actually, like you said, you didn't review the movie The Lion King. You took three um impactful scenes in the movie and talked about what they meant to you. And I sort of like that. It's also a little bit of a character study. You talk a lot about who Rafiki is in the movie, and that's kind of cool. So I mean, I would recommend everybody subscribe to the channel and watch your journey there. I also want to recommend that you put the link in the show notes, because YouTube's search algorithm is terrible, which is surprising to me because they're owned by Google. Um, Anyways, you're writing, you mentioned a short fiction. I'm so curious about this. I'm like really curious around like what's the role of tech in this story? Just because of the overarching, like, is it like a science fiction? Is it like a
No.
techno?
So when we say fiction, okay, zero tech related. It's um so when I think about tech, and I'm gonna let you get back to it here. When I think about tech, for me, it's very impersonal. It's there's not much of a human connection. And when you think about like really good stories, like they're grounded
Yeah.
in relationships. And so this fiction that I'm writing, it said like, you know, it goes back to like 1975,
Okay.
and then in the present days 1995. So it's kind of pre-tech. It's there's some tech that emerges. Um I'm really excited to share it with you. And
Yeah.
honestly with everybody. I don't want to like say that this I'm doing this for me. Um like and you have to do it for you. So like the YouTube, I mean if nobody watches this stuff, like I really enjoy this. And it's something that I haven't given time to, is the stuff that I enjoy and makes me feel like me.
Yeah.
And so, if I get 5 views of who cares? Like I'm getting a chance to do the things that I love editing. I love like trying to string something together. And I'm just getting started. So, they'll get better. I talked about like we talk about you mentioned tech, right? I actually, if you end up watching movie moments going forward, you'll notice that a lot of the stuff that I review is not or there aren't heavy tech films.
Hmm.
They're films that are grounded in relationships. As a matter of fact, the next one that I'm going to be putting out is based on Heat. Have you ever seen that
Okay.
movie?
Yeah. I just watched it recently, actually.
Oh, it's one of Michael Mann's best films, and I, I'm trying not to talk too much about it. But if you give me on the track, I won't shut up about
Okay.
it. All I can say is I'll drop you the link. Take a look at the review, and again, it's about the moments, the sequences,
Mhm.
character performances. It's not about the review, like did I like the movie or not. They're
Right.
about like this stood with me 20 years. That's what it's about.
Yeah, I will say that I just watched Heat recently, I think on your recommendation in one of our previous conversations. You mentioned it in passing, and I knew it was on Netflix, so I went ahead and watched it. Amazing, amazing film. Um, and I'll leave it there. Everybody go watch Movie Moments when that comes out. But it's interesting you mentioned, like, how tech plays a role. I think that it's really interesting to see how modern stories are unfolding, how we're trying to tell stories and put tech in the background. I think about this even in the how apparent the absence of tech is in stories. Like I love Harry Potter. I love the Harry Potter stories. And it's really interesting to me to think like all of this is mostly written in a world absent cell phones. It has to be. That's the only way that most of the magic still makes sense, right? And I think that's also true. We're wrestling with that a lot, and I think it comes down to the core of what you said is like uh technology tends to be the buffer, and we're seeing that, I mean, across tons and tons of studies. I won't get into it, but it tends to be an impersonal buffer on our humanity. And so we're having to find ways to flip that into the background and tell stories in the past, right? There's a lot of historic fiction and revisiting old grounds, and like telling stories there. I'm reading a book right now written by Emma Donoghue, and it's called Haven. It's so interesting to me. It's written about a group of monks in like the 12th century, and how they needed to disconnect from the world and go to their own private place. And I'm like, how wild is it that like in the 12th century, here's this group of people. Now this is fiction. It's fiction. It's not true. But like there's this idea that in the 12th century, with like, think about the technology level there. Like we're talking like, people were still getting stabbed with spears and stuff.
Yeah.
And there was a group of people that were like, it's too much. I gotta get away. I gotta get away. And then here we are today, like constantly connected, but not connected, like constantly
Yeah.
on our phones, connected to the matrix, but not to each other. And it's kind of the same thing. So at some point you drop your hand and you say, I gotta get out. I gotta get away. I need to disconnect.
That's what this whole thing is about. This
Mm.
is why our our we're not shooting straight toward Anvil. I know that's something that we're going to kind of circle back to in the background. For me personally though, I can say pretty like if I'm hammering that nail in, I can say that the company and the things that I want to build, and I'm not even really interested in building a company today, but the things that I want to build, the things that I want to produce and deliver, they are not like in the slightest tech related. Now, I believe in leveraging tech, right? Like if you think about it, tech is the way that we can get our content out to people.
Mhm.
It's the way we can get the message out to people. So that's leveraging tech. But for me myself, um, I'm trying to pull back
Mhm.
and see how, you know to like reaffirm relationships, right? And to help people, and to help others say, maybe I want to spend less time in the matrix, right? I want to
Mhm.
spend less time in there. I was um Inception is another movie.
Mhm.
If anybody's watched this podcast, you'll know that I always have to bring a movie into it, a film.
Yeah.
um you just don't understand like how much film has affected me. Like it My dream job would absolutely be to direct a film, and I might one day. um Inception is a film where I think about, it's similar, right? It's not super tech heavy. Now they leverage tech to accomplish the thing, but it's not tech heavy like in the background. It's not all this stuff. Um, but these people, they end up going to sleep because that's where they can wake up, right? That's where they can dream these vivid dreams, and with the assistance of some stuff. But they end up wanting to be in there longer and longer, basically out of reality. And you think about that, like for today, tech is just another way, right? We'll pick up our phone and we'll doom scroll,
Mhm.
you know, before you know it, a couple hours have passed, and then you get the notification from Apple says your screen time went up 200%
Yeah.
in the last week or something. You're like, man. And it's there's lots of things helping people realize the fourth part of that of what I sometimes consider my escape plan, which is also another movie. There's a movie called Escape Plan, but um, a part of my escape plan is the fourth part of that is plants. So
Real trees.
real trees, yeah, just like that last episode. There's a real world out there with real trees, real people, and that's one of it. Is that if I can start to grow plants and sell them to my neighbors, help to validate that for me. Now the idea's already been validated. Like I, I'm one of those persons that I go to the store, and if I see some beautiful trees, I'm just almost gonna guarantee I'm gonna buy one. I was walking through HEB the other day, and I had these three trees in my cart. They're Brody junipers, and they're just beautiful trees. If you don't know what a Brody juniper is, look it up. They get really big, just gorgeous evergreen trees. And I'm walking within my cart and I get all these compliments. People are like, "Oh, those are beautiful trees." And I'm thinking to myself, I didn't grow them. I'm just putting them in my cart. Like I'm about to buy them. And people are complimenting me like
Mm.
I did this amazing thing. And it's interesting, right? It's a really great like study. You could even do that. Go to the HEB, put a couple beautiful plants in your cart. Don't even buy them. Just put them in your cart and walk around the store and see how many compliments you get.
You're
And,
right. You're right. You're right. Yeah.
and it's a testament to the fact that when we step back from the screen and when we see something beautiful in nature, it immediately calls to us and it draws us in. And again, the fourth part of that for me is growing plants and selling them. It's not about like, let me sell you something. It's like, let me help you, you know, pull out of the matrix. Let me help you with something that you can like enjoy and grow and enjoy the growth over time. Right. And so that's number 4 for me.
Yeah, I love that, and I think there's something really important there that you're touching into, and that's I mean I'm sure I've mentioned this study on this podcast before, but there was this study done that like just seeing, not even being in, but just seeing a green space will lower your like blood pressure and your somatic stress on your body. Like we have like there's studies have been done that show that, and so like it's an important part of who we are. Like we think we're the, fast-paced 21st century human that is plugged into the matrix at all time, but really we're not. We spent the majority of our existence like living, out in nature and being with nature, and this is all very new to us. And so like it's really important to like, as you call that out, like working with your hands has tons and tons of value. Um, in interesting ways, but one of them is just like making you happier as a person, making me happier, making us happier to just be out among the trees. And I think uh I love that you called out earlier that like, what you're really doing is reinvesting in yourself. And that's an important thing for all of us to do. I joke with my wife a lot and tell her like now's the time to get my art degree, because like, my path is pretty much set. Like I could do this for the next, 20 or 30 years. And and now's the time to explore like the fun things that I've always wanted to do. And what I appreciate about you, and I have some friends that have done this too, is like I'm a waiter. I'm like, yeah, I could do that, and then like and then I wait, and you're like, no, I can do that. I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna go buy the boat. Like I want to get the boat. I have some friends, they bought an RV and they're like they go traveling every weekend. They go out and I'm like, yeah, I could do that. And this is something we've talked about on here. Like it's like it, and so I love that you're diving into that first. It's inspiring, and maybe that's where I'll be in Q1 of 2024 as well. We'll see.
You know, you go back like 20 years and you go to get an art degree and people are like, you're never going to make any money on that, right? And I'm not saying that you're going to go get your art degree to make money, but we live in a different world to where things have flipped, right? So think about this. Like 20 years ago, you're coming out with an art degree, you're trying to like do art, like be a musician. And you're making like bottom of the barrel money. You're barely surviving. You're a musician, but
Mhm.
then you also have to go work at a coffee shop.
Right.
And then in the like early 2000s, you're in tech and you're just like killing it. And people are becoming millionaires and all that stuff. And the more that the general audience has got swept into tech, that all these things that are artsy, being able to play an instrument, being able to draw, being able to like create, write a story and all those things have really increased in value because we have less people that can do them now. Because a lot of people are spending their time in, in what we're calling the matrix, right? So when I was growing up in high school, I started working a job and I went and bought my first guitar, like with my
Hmm.
money, and I
Hmm.
learned to play it not because it was cool, because it appealed to me. Like the sounds really appealed to me, that you could produce, and so I learned, I taught myself to play guitar. Right today, because there's less people doing it now. You could still look online and be like, oh, there's a lot of people doing it, but there's less overall because our kids are growing up and they're just going straight into the screen, right? Whether it's
Right.
it's a show or video games, they're going into that because remember when we're bored, we find stuff to do. When
Yeah.
you're bored, you go pick up the instrument that's sitting in the corner. When you're bored, you go and you hop on the bike, right? You go and you do these things. But when there's a screen there, it's like, oh, I'm just going to go to the screen because it's easy.
Yep.
So there's
Think
actually
so.
less people today doing these artsy stuff. And so then if you have a skill like this, or even woodworking, there's
Yeah.
people on like, these platforms and all they're just doing is woodworking and they're taking commissions. Why? Because there's less people that know how to do this today and less people that want to do this today. And so I wanted to be over here in tech before. And now I'm saying I want to go back over here where I can work with my hands and create with my hands, right? And with my creativity. And I feel better about like the odds of being able to make money in this space over here in the creative space. And I'm not talking to that guy right there. I'm not talking about him, but he's part of it.
Yeah.
Um, this is Grigor. He's
Igor.
actually a disgruntled tech worker. Expression. Um, and hopefully we'll get into his story somewhere along my journey. But I have less doubt that I can go and be successful, and successful is relative. I don't mean successful like rich or anything. I mean being able to like pay my bills. I have this confidence that I can be successful writing a couple books and doing the other things and selling plants and stuff like that, as opposed to, hey, I've got to have this one high stress tech job to be able to do the things I want to do. So I'm about to jump the ship and start swimming across to this creative space, group of people over here.
Yeah, I love it. And I mean, for the group here, I hope you'll leave some links on how they can find you to follow your journey. I definitely know that I'll be well, this isn't the end of us talking. So that's the good news, is this is just the end of us recording a podcast and trying to run a high intensity tech company together. But we'll still chat. So I don't have to necessarily like, I mean, I subscribe to Movie Moments already, but
yes, I got
and
one.
yeah, you got one. And and maybe some of our 20 followers will 20 listeners will also follow. But yeah,
It's not quantity, it's quality, right?
that's it. That's right. That's the thing. It's like we've looked at the numbers on the podcast a couple of times. I know you've mentioned them, and I've been very candid about like I don't actually care about them, because like it's just been an excuse for us to chat every week, and so we'll have to maybe come up with a new excuse. But like it is exactly that. It's like we have this stable base of listeners that has kind of been with us on this whole journey, and now this chapter of the journey is over. And that's okay. And now a new chapter starts.